And we are now live.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I am Mike Waters, and I'm the chair of the LGBTQIA plus Intersectional Rights Task Force, which is a task force of the Human Rights Commission. And I use they, them pronouns. I apologize, I did not get it into my signature quite in time for the broadcast, but perhaps we could have since Tricarico's off camera, Byron, perhaps if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Hello, my name is Byron Kimball, and I use he, him pronouns, and I am a resident of Ward 5.
And Tricarico, you don't have to go on video, but would you like to introduce yourself?
No, I'll come back on. I wanted to finish my donut, so I didn't start the meeting with my mouth full. My name's Tricarico, and I'm a commissioner for the HRC resident of Ward 2, and I use they, them pronouns. Marilyn, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Marilyn Daly Blair. I'm sitting in for Gretchen Bennett this evening. I am actually the director of Center 50 Plus, and I use she, her pronouns.
And Bria, I know you're here for technical support, but if you'd like to say hello.
Sure, my pleasure. Thank you. My name is Bria DeZodel. I am with the City of Salem IT department and just helping to make sure everything goes smoothly technically. I use she, her pronouns, but thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. I believe our first agenda item is approval of our minutes from our last meeting in December. Did everybody get a chance to take a look at those, and were there any questions? Yeah, I did review those.
Good. Looks good. I make a motion to approve.
I second that motion.
All those in favor? You can raise your hand, I guess. Great. So the minutes and the agenda for tonight pass. And our next topic, I don't believe we, I skipped over public comment, but I don't believe we received any. Is that right?
That is correct. We did not receive any public comment.
Great. So our next topic is around the Safe Space Project. And I think that our main thing that we wanted to talk about tonight was the enforcement section, which is currently still blank in the document that we've been working with. On the 14th of January, Gretchen sent us some information about the HRC's general complaint process to kind of use as a starting point. I wondered if the task force had a moment to review that information, and if you had thoughts about how that complaint process might kind of line up with what we were envisioning for businesses that participate in this program. That's a mouthful, I know.
So let me clarify. There's an actual complaint process outlined in Chapter 97 that she's having us look at. I'm trying to find it here. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, she included actually a document that is a more of a step-by-step procedural document. And then she also linked to Chapter 97's enforcement provisions. So that she kind of provided us with both. The step-by-step is like a little bit more laid out, like a, how the process or how the complaint moves through from her as staff, how it's evaluated, how resources are given, when does the complaint get elevated to, say, go to the full HRC, in cases where it's not resolved, and then I think it ends with like prosecution elevation of the complaint anyway to a more legal context.
So I guess my question would be that what would this look like in the context of our safe spaces thing? Because not being a safe space isn't a crime. That's not to say that we wouldn't perhaps encounter that. That would be pretty cut and dry. You know, yeah, I think if you break the law, we can take you out of safe spaces. But when it's not a crime, but it's still kind of in violation of the tenets that we're doing, you know, how would we use that process to determine whether someone's in it or not, and what would that look like?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the key question for me as well. That's why I kind of I spent more time looking at her procedural document than I did the actual Chapter 97, because I thought, yeah, it wouldn't look exactly the same, but maybe it would follow some of the same steps. I mean, generally the complaint, and I say generally because it's going to probably vary, but generally the complaint would come in through Gretchen, and then she would, in her role, as she does with other types of discrimination complaints, try to resolve it kind of at the lowest level before it would come to HRC. So I wondered if that process might inform it a little bit more than like what's in the law.
I mean, I suppose that's the way that I'm, kind of seeing, kind of envisioning it. And I don't know if like either of you are kind of on the same page, like where, part of our initial step is evaluating the claim and seeing if resolution is, or if the complaint resolves around either violation of Chapter 97 or can be described as discrimination, as of course defined by city, state, and federal law.
I think it's also a question of whether the business violated the program, because the program goes beyond law, and so
I think there's like an initial branch off point.
Yeah,
they want to identify. And
yeah, so the complaint is sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, but maybe that's part of the question is like once we kind of determine that branching off point, and if we determine that the complaint question, maybe doesn't violate Chapter 97 or federal, state, local discrimination laws, it's part. I guess that's really the question. Like, what do we do when we determine that it's not, that it's in violation of the tenets of the program? But I think it's just so it's that jumping off point.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, because like I was saying, it's not always going to be a Chapter 97 violation. It could be something smaller. So maybe we come up with a framework of like, a clear cut and dry Chapter 97 violation is like, you're out. But when it's not a Chapter 97 violation, we might look at other alternative options, or, kind of make a note. And then if it's happening again, revisit, okay, maybe this isn't the program for you, kind of thing, like we talked about. Because I'm a little bit more willing to give a chance when it's not a legal definition. Not that the law is a good way to decide discrimination or safety, but it's a little bit easier to, I don't know, a little bit easier to determine like, yeah, this is not cool versus, something that's not a 97 might be like a staff attitude. And that might be a little bit more likely to be adjustable. Whereas if someone is like breaking the law, there was probably a lot of things leading up to that point. It wasn't just like one and done. And oftentimes when someone does pursue legal action, it's exactly that situation. They made multiple attempts to kind of get through whatever discrimination they were experiencing, and that didn't work. So they had to turn to the law, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my thought behind it. But, that's just something I'm throwing out there.
So with the safe space, is there, as a part of the discussion, say there's a violation, they're not following the guidelines of safe space, is there a re-education process that they're invited back into? Isn't it a learning, growing, changing community project as a whole?
That's definitely where I would lean for an initial complaint. That the goals of the project are around educating our businesses. We have many businesses where the business owners have taken it upon themselves to get education and to treat people with respect. But we may have some folks who join the program who are not all the way there, and who need the program as an opportunity for that. And so I would hope that, the first stage after a complaint, and a discussion with both the person making the complaint and with the business, would be that if re-education was sort of the option, that would be the option that was taken. I think where I think we need to have sort of an enforcement provision is once that sort of re-engagement has happened and the business owner has either accepted that these are the terms of belonging in the program and they're going to comply, or they've decided, nah, this isn't, I'm not going to follow this. Once they've made a decision not to follow the tenets of the program, then I think we do need to have a mechanism for removal from the program. And I don't know if that is a point where, because I'm imagining most of this, as many of these things do, is going to fall on Gretchen because she gets the initial complaint. And she may have more input into this when we speak to her next, but I'm imagining that there comes a point where Gretchen has to escalate it to HRC and say, I don't think that this business owner is willing to engage in the program or follow the tenets. And at that point, I would think, and looking at the steps document that she provided, it seems like there is a point in that document where complaints get escalated to the full commission. And I would imagine that for this program, that would be sort of the useful last resort. It gets escalated to the commission. The commission makes a determination about whether the business can stay in the program. But that was a lot of conjecture and me thinking, but what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I agree, because I would hesitate to put in a set rule, because I think if we're going to want to be able to evaluate things, based on what happened and also based on how the business responds. And part of this package, when we talked about including resources, I think could be, hey, let's say we have this violation. Well, hey, we happen to have this really great resource that could help you with that education. So our recommendation for you is that you access this resource to get that education, and then maybe we follow up with them in a month or two and see if that's happened. And then, that would help us to determine, is this going to be resolved, and is the issue going to be addressed, or is this going to be an ongoing problem for other people in this space based on how they answer it? And I think that would be the escalation piece too. If the follow-up is, oh, we haven't really done anything and we're not going to address this issue, then that's when we would probably talk to the rest of the commission, hey, it doesn't seem like this business is really complying with what we're asking them to do. So I think it kind of follows that pattern.
So can I ask, just because I'm taking some notes here. This is interesting conversation. Thank you so much for letting me be here. When a business has agreed to work towards being a safe space and they fall, do they have things that they have? I mean, is it renewable? Do you each year create the list that have complied? So you're not saying you're out, or you get front page splash where, I'm just wondering if there's some softer approaches, because the ultimate goal is that every business is going to create a safe space. And how do we keep, I'm just thinking in terms of language, but also, when you hear, what was the word we keep using? Like you don't do it right, and so you're sanctioned. I'm wondering if people will be hesitant to even start the process if there is some fear that they might fail. Like they might not do well or something might happen. If they'll be scared and not participate when the language is really education, growth, ever changing. It's circular, really. It's not really one and done. Isn't it really a circular process of growth? And I don't know if there's some way of creating that safety so that ultimately the goal is met. And then you're not kicking people off, but instead you just don't renew them. Well, you didn't you didn't do it.
That's valid. And if they're too scared to participate in a program, it's not for them. I don't want to make it super exclusionary, but I also recognize that there is a risk anytime you are taking on any kind of diversity, inclusion, acceptance project, right? Like you're going to make mistakes, you're going to mess up, and you need to be able to own that and work on it. I would, of course, not want to I wouldn't want any of our language to sound super punitive or super exclusive, but I also want to be realistic about what the expectations are going into it. That, yeah, we're here to support you, but we also have these expectations that we need you to meet.
Yeah. The process, though, when someone has a complaint, it comes to Gretchen right away, and then she defines right away if it's Chapter 97, and then you see it as paralleling the process. Once she determines it's not a Chapter 97 legal matter, it'll go to another side group to do a further discussion in the terms of safe space. Is that what you're thinking?
I think so. But both of you said really good things that I really want to think about. I think the idea of it being renewable, and that one of the possible mechanisms is non-renewal as opposed to removal, is actually really compelling to me. Not that I'm not saying we want to water down our ability to remove somebody from the program. I think that we have to always retain that ability to remove someone from the program. But non-renewal for not re-signing the pledge, for not responding appropriately to a complaint during the year, or having an unresolved complaint, there's a lot of power in that because it requires everybody in the program to look at it at least once a year and make a decision about whether they're going to make that commitment again. And it also gives Human Rights Commission as a body the power to make tweaks and changes to the pledge language each year and improve it with more input from the community. Because of course, this pledge language, I think it's great because I wrote it. I think that we will continue to get input on it over the years, and it will just get better and better. So I do like this idea of renewal. What do you think?
Yeah, I like it because I think when I'm thinking through, the follow-up of, hey, we have this complaint and we tell this business to re-educate, like how much time do we give them? And our answer is built in with the year, right? So if a year later, that business hasn't done that re-education, hasn't resolved that complaint, we have a pretty clear, like, hey, you knew going into this that you would be renewed every year. We asked you to do this, and this is why we're choosing not to renew you. Because I know that, running a business is a lot, and I would like to see that follow-up resolution within a couple months, but that may not be realistic. So the year gives plenty of time for them to fix that.
What do you think, Byron?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of on the same page as far as, that timeline goes. And, and again, like almost intrigued by the idea of the renewal process. I guess like where, what I'm like curious to see what your thoughts are is, with the renewal process, like, how do we want, I guess, like how static or how exactly, like, how do we want to like navigate the process of, say, if we have a business who we decide not to renew, like, how do we want to visit the process of, say, them rejoining the program in the future?
Yeah.
Because I can easily see, like, say we have a business who either comes under new management or like a business decides that either they disagree with our decision to remove them from the program or have decided to later pursue rejoining, despite maybe an earlier decision.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
It gets more and more complex, I think, because a lot of it is going to depend on the reasons. So they were non-renewed because they didn't sign the pledge is different, for the next year because they got busy and didn't answer the email or the call or whatever. That's one situation. Another situation, they were non-renewed for cause, an unresolved complaint that sat out there for a year and we were not satisfied with that. That's another situation. So it got a pretty complicated program to administer. And I guess one of the questions that we may want to consider, and as part of our later conversation as well, is, does the city have capacity to administer this program? Is it volunteer administered by us? What are the requirements going to be around that? And maybe we are going to need to make an ask at some point for some resource to help with that. But in any case, I do think it's complicated.
It's not the same type of program, but we run a age-friendly business certification where we train businesses on being honoring and respecting the needs of our older adults.
Really?
And each year we do a training, and they go through this training, and we don't certify them. We just call them, I'm drawing a blank. Basically, we have accepted them. We stay away from the word certified, but annually we send them a survey that's saying, how is it working for you? We compare that survey to the number of complaints or number of calls we've had where that business was not age friendly. And then we have a committee, and there's 4 of them on the committee, and they look at the complaint list. If there's none, they look at how the survey looks. And when the survey actually has negative feedback from the business, we have an opportunity to redirect our training and see how we can resolve it, because we're trying both sides. So there are some mechanisms to that, and it became very labor intensive for our staff, and we did have to convert it. But this team actually is able to manage it in about 3 weeks at about 30 hours total. And they check in and visit with every business that they have certified. And at this time, they only have, I'll just tell you, we only have 18 businesses certified. We just launched not that long ago. But I'm wondering if that's a framework or some framework like that we could put in your annual renewal evaluation process, so you'd have an idea of cost and resources you would need.
Wow, I think that would be super helpful for us as we try to figure out, how we would want to do this, and super helpful for Gretchen as well, I think, to have that information. I did not know that existed. How do you communicate that program? Just at Center 50 Plus? And
we do. We have a city website. Yeah, we are partnered with with AARP and World Health Organization, and they created the framework. And then now we've brought it to Salem, and we're in the action plan. So this was first action of our action plan. So there's definitely some things that we can just share, but also I'm just thrilled to hear what you're doing, because it just ties so nicely to all the things that we're trying to do. So I definitely will provide that for Gretchen so she can just see, but it isn't, honestly, we've narrowed it down to like 3 or 4 steps that volunteers could handle. Our commission and our volunteers could handle. And it actually made a very nice project. It was very concrete work. And sometimes we struggle to have concrete work. As commissioners, that can be a hard place sometimes.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I would love to see what you're doing, you know, how it's run, what the cost is, because we're being asked by city to ask for what we need. And we discussed in our last meeting about budget. So I've already been kind of wrestling in the back of my mind, you know, larger cities have designated like DEI person, like an analyst
Yes.
or an outreach person or something like that. And this kind of program would be a great thing for a position like that to do, which I recognize maybe years down the road. But, you know, if we start this program with this framework that's rather simple, we could build on it. And then if again, a position like that comes into place, they can do that more complicated stuff and just have the time and ability to do that. Because I know we're all super into this, but like realistically, I don't want to burden us with this huge thing. Because that's not the point. And I also really like the idea of like an initial education piece to like get involved, because I can imagine like not only do we have a lot of things we want to cover, you know, to your point about it every year, there's probably going to be things that we want to add each year as we discover like, oh wow, hey, here's this thing we've been doing that's actually really not inclusive. We need to address this. And that's a way to bring that in.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we've necessarily resolved all of our things, but we've got a lot more to dig into and explore. Before we kind of move on, are there any other considerations for safe spaces that we want to kind of tackle tonight, knowing that it's going to be probably a multi-meeting process to really build this out?
Yeah, so this is something, you know, a smaller piece of this, you know, to be sure. And you know, not just something we'll like want to dive into in future meetings once we get a sense of framework and budget and whatnot. But part of it is like, down the line, do we want to consider like physical branding or components that we can, you know, allow
Very hard for me, Byron, not to jump on that right away. That's my background, as you know, and it's your background too.
Yeah, of course. You know, because you know, part of this initial discussion, you did come out of, you know, this comparison between university programs using, you know, safe space branding, or as part of their university-wide programs too.
Yeah, coming from a branding background, I mean, what really drew me to this, to wanting to pursue this idea with our task force, was really the visibility. It was really that I know some business owners in downtown who are absolutely safe and wonderful people who I can walk into their establishment at any time with anybody on my arm presenting any gender, and I'm going to be welcome. And I know that from those folks. But when you walk around downtown Salem, you would have no way of knowing that, of knowing what's, you know, where those safe places are. And even thinking about, I apologize, he's rolling around on the ground. The dog.
No judgment here.
But even thinking about the mayor's ask, which is another topic on our agenda today, they asked what would make Salem a safe place. And I think a lot of safety is in visibility. It's in visible markers that tell you that the people here are good. They're going to be safe people for you to get refuge from. They're not going to hassle you about your gender presentation or anything like that. And so that was kind of, the branding of it was really where it started for me, but I know that I always go there. So I knew that we actually had to have a program to support that.
No, absolutely. And, because that's, the big incentive for, folks who join the program is you gain to be part of this collective program and having the visibility to spread their name. So I guess that's just a piece I want us to be conscientious of, as we form budget and determine our capacity for this is, how much visibility are we providing and where do we want to go with this? And so.
And I think that the design elements of the program, which of course I'm all over in terms of the way my brain operates, is a real opportunity to build something that whether obviously we're talking about a sticker, we're talking about a decal, whatever, but how that sticker represents our communities is like a really cool opportunity for Salem to have something that you don't see really in Portland, that you don't see or if you saw the example from the Seattle Safe Spaces project, which is kind of ugly, you don't really, it's just such a cool opportunity for Salem.
Yeah.
Something kind of different.
I agree. And I was thinking about this a lot because Byron, at our last meeting, our special meeting for planning, we had a community member come, and one of the requests was like, we should have some art and some representation to celebrate, members of the community, especially the Black community, and so that a Black person could walk through Salem and be like, hey, I'm okay here. And that so beautifully tied in to, and not just I'm okay, I'm celebrated. I'm not just tolerated, or I'm not just able to exist. I'm celebrating, I'm encouraged to be here. And I feel like our branding with this project is also a way to do that, right? If we could incorporate some signals, some cultural things, something, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, that makes that part really clear too, because I definitely come at it from my perspective as a queer person, but there's a lot of other people who deserve to be safe in Salem and don't feel that way. So I would love to see what branding we could incorporate there. Can we incorporate, Black art or Black artists or something like that would add another symbol. Mike's right. It's a really great opportunity to put something like that in there. And I would love to see something designed which I know is a big ask to, incorporate all those different ideas. Could be challenging, but I think we could do it.
Do you have any connections or a way to spread safe space and give visibility to art and all those things through the CCTV, like a safe space channel or a space safe? Is there one already? And what do you do with that?
I mean, we've done CCTV stuff, and we're also working on like a newsletter that would go out to all of our partners. So I'd imagine that would be one of our biggest channels. But I'm also anticipating that when this gets started, we would probably be going to various business.
Door to door.
Yeah, door to door, just being like, hey, this is what we're doing. And having it spread from there, because that is a couple of things. I mean, one thing, it spreads our program, but it also helps us as commissioners kind of get out there and talk about the work we're doing, which is always a challenge. And being a part of Awareness Task Force ties in really nicely with that too. So it's kind of, there's a lot of things that happen when those conversations get started.
That's neat.
We would definitely also want to use business organizations if they are willing to play with us, whether it's the Chamber or the Rotary or other business organizations to word, again, if they're willing. I know some of those organizations are not always super progressive on these kinds of issues, but it doesn't hurt to ask. I love the idea of artists creating the sticker, and what really drew me in was thinking about if we had kind of a renewal process that we could have a different sticker
Yeah.
each year, because you can imagine from a design perspective, and I do this kind of stuff all the time, as you know, that like once you get the rainbow flag, the trans flag, the representations of BIPOC community, access for our disabled community, and you mish that all up together in one image, it starts to look pretty messy. But if we had different stickers on different years, or if we maybe had one central design that was a little more sort of basic, but then we built upon it. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities there. You could see for getting different kinds of artists and different kinds of viewpoints into the program. Not that our businesses are going to want to put 60 stickers on their windows, but one at a time if it was renewed. I don't know.
Are we turning this into Pokemon? Gotta collect them all.
That stuff works.
It does, though.
Rewards program like that, it works.
I mean, you could even have kind of a focus each year, you know, and the design of the sticker would reflect that. So maybe, you know, our first year is focusing on Black Lives Matters. We've got something in there. Maybe next year is accessibility. So we've got that. Maybe the year after that. I mean, it'd be hard to choose, right? But I think it also speaks to the ongoing, like, we're going to keep working on this. We're going to keep updating it. We're going to keep improving. And, you know, having a call out for artists of like, hey, we want a sticker that reflects these things. Like, what do you got, you know, with the businesses that we connect with and the community? Like, that could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, and you could see how even the launch of the sticker each year is an opportunity for communication, because the talked about how to communicate with businesses. We also need to communicate with the communities that are, you know, that are benefiting hopefully from having these safe spaces.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, this is cool. Is there anything else we should talk about on safe spaces tonight before we move on to the mayor's request? So a little bit of background on the mayor's request. I want to find the exact language. Byron, are you aware of this at all? Tricarico and I have kind of been working on it. But
I am vaguely aware of it. This is the request that the mayor made at a recent city council meeting.
That's right. That's right.
Regarding his desire for the HRC to explore ways for the city to make declarative, you know, statement or shape policy. And
Mike, do you have his actual motion? Do you want me to read it?
I can't find it. Do you have it?
So, yes, I do. It says, Mayor motion. I move that City Council request a report from Human Rights Commission on actions the city should take to promote diversity as a core strength of our community, and that ensures everyone, regardless of culture, race, or ability, can thrive in safe and dignity. January 11th.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. So we had about this topic last night with the full Human Rights Commission, and Tricarico has already done a ton of legwork, specifically for the BIPOC community, gathering information from that community. And I do think from a commission perspective and from hearing the different voices that there's strong interest in the commission for it to be a BIPOC centered report, that those are clearly the issues right now that are most concerning to us in our community, and that would be what we would center on. All of that said, I think that queer issues are certainly related, and there's a lot of needs within our community as well. And so I wondered, prior to this meeting, and why I asked Gretchen to put it on the agenda was that perhaps our group should undertake some outreach to some of our queer counterparts to see if there are needs in the community or other considerations that we should undertake that meet the mayor's request of the commission. And Tricarico, feel free to add.
Well, I mean, the timing is great because our Safe Spaces project will be a great recommendation, right? I mean, and then the Equity Lens project that Dr. Brown has been helping us with is another great thing that we can put forth. As far as queer specific stuff, I don't know. I would love to see, again, like a specific position at the city that's looking at that. Like I actually, there was an opening I considered applying for, but I didn't. For City of Portland has an LGBTQ analyst. Like that's all they do is policy review, outreach, community focus. I know Salem's a lot smaller, but you know, who does that now, if at all, in the city? And how could we ask for that? Again, I know that may be really far out there, but like I said in the main meeting, I feel like we should ask for everything we could possibly think of, and then they know where to start, right? Like maybe it doesn't happen now, maybe it doesn't happen for a couple of years, but we can give them, you know, things to work towards. So, you know, is that an option, and what does that look like?
Yeah, and as a commission, we can also prioritize our asks too. So it doesn't hurt to have more, and then we can work through the process as a commission of prioritizing. Byron, were you about to say something? Did I interrupt you?
Yeah, no, you didn't interrupt. You didn't talk over. But you know, I almost wonder too if we might consider a staff member or adding an additional staff member who has the option to analyze issues related to Chapter 97 topics of focus, which, you know, of course, would cover issues faced by the BIPOC community as well as the LGBTQ community, and intersecting issues that are very concerned about.
I love that.
That might be a lot more feasible than, you know, budget-wise, having an analyst for LGBTQ and analyst for BIPOC, analyst for this, if we have one position that might realistically cover what the city needs to start, and then, you know, it could expand from there. Yeah, I like that.
One thought that I had, just from my experience with Rainbow Youth, we had a period when I was on the board of Rainbow Youth where the meeting space was unavailable. And it was very, very challenging to find affordable meeting space that met their needs. And that group, I think they're meeting on Discord now, but prior to that, they were meeting in a church. And that was challenging, or reported to be challenging, by some of the youth who struggled with church trauma, church abuse from their past. And I know we looked into the library at one point, and the library was too expensive for what the group could really manage. And so I wondered about community space. Danielle has talked in the past about a center, and I just wondered, you know, if we asked around within our community, do we think that there might be, you know, support for some kind of space? And I don't know if that's necessarily a City of Salem ask, but the City of Salem can help facilitate things. You know, they can help move ideas forward. I don't know. That was one that came up for me, was just around community space.
You know, I think it'd be worth looking into.
Yeah.
You know, have a component like where, you know, if we're not necessarily building a new space, And if it's something we can use safe space program to help facilitate in a way, would be to maybe at least add more support for community spaces who might be willing to host or support organizations in town, or help build a network of equitable organizations who have the capacity.
Mhm. Well, as a community as a whole, we have a huge shortage of space.
That's true.
Gathering
Yeah.
space.
Housing, commercial.
Well, I wondered, I'm always thinking a little bit pie in the sky, but our retail centers downtown are not going to survive. I don't think. I mean, people don't go to shopping malls very much anymore. And those properties are very expensive, and they're owned not by the city, unfortunately. But does the city have a desire, a plan, a way of thinking about all of that empty space that's currently unused that supports not just our community, of course, but like all of the communities that we're talking about? And I know, Marilyn, you may have a lot more insight about that than any of us do, but I just wonder, why can't we just open up the JCPenney and clear it out and put things in?
If I had a nickel for every time I heard that, I could probably buy JCPenney's.
Right? Here's a pie in the sky idea. All right.
I just received a 10-minute heads up from Bria. So
yes, so we should probably make this quick. But down the line, so here's something we could, maybe to think about. What if we, offered some kind of support for grants or visibility for business owners who identified with the BIPOC community, LGBT community, in encouraging business owners, like from various backgrounds, to open businesses in downtown Salem. Offered some mechanism of support.
Yeah, actually, that's been one of the big kind of complaints that I've heard in my legwork for that big ask, is like, what can we do to support minority-owned businesses and encourage more minority-owned businesses, to come to Salem, to make Salem their home, for all the obvious reasons, but again, just to build that community. And I think I put a couple things in there about like grants, offering support to get people through the grants, because there are city grants available, but they can be challenging, as well as, prioritizing minority-owned businesses, kind of similar to what the state of Oregon does through the governor's office. Proposals are, solicited and priority is given to women and minority-owned businesses. So something kind of like that, where we're prioritizing those businesses. And yeah, I wonder too, what kind of community center or cultural center could we ask for that could be used by a variety of communities? Because yeah, we definitely need gathering space that's affordable and accessible to everybody.
Yeah, and as much as I am so behind the idea of supporting these businesses cropping up, the real question that I have is, what do we do with these huge spaces that a small minority or queer-owned business is just not going to be in the running for? Certainly getting more of those folks downtown into smaller retail venues is like, it is golden for us, and it's going to make Salem a better place. But I just wonder, and probably, Marilyn, you're getting this all the time, what can we do with these giant gaping holes that are opening up downtown?
Right.
We should talk.
Is there anything that the city can do?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to ask Gretchen to have Eunice Kim. Did she already come talk to you? I'll have Eunice Kim from the planning department. She needs to come and give everybody an update, give everyone an update on what is planned for future development design, and because a lot of it is pushing energy to downtown, and that voice needs to be there. So, and also maybe Eunice could shed some light on the JCPenney property and all of that.
The other thing that I'm thinking of is that in Woodburn, they have like a space in the center that they offer like booths to small businesses, you know, almost like Saturday market style where you just have your little booth, but it's indoors. And so there's like a little coffee shop and there's like a little fruit stand and there's a little like, it's almost like food cart-esque, but you can be pretty much any business. I'm wondering if that would be a way to, you know, use those big spaces. And I'd also love to know like how they're doing, you know, especially with everything that's happened. So that could be a model to propose, you know, do something similar with these large spaces to break it up and make it accessible to small businesses.
Have you all at Center 50 Plus ever talked about the feasibility of being downtown? Do you like where you are, and has that ever come up?
So, well, we only opened in 2008 and it was an urban renewal project. So we're kind of stuck there, but we actually clear back in 1976, our original location was going to be Salem Center. And they did a land swap through an urban renewal project, which put us out in Northeast. And I don't know the details because I was just a wee one then, but bottom line is we originally were there and they deemed it such valuable property that they moved us to less valuable property, which makes me sad. Isn't that the truth behind the story? You know, the dollar of the business downtown is pushed the seniors out. But we have a brand new building. We haven't been there very long. I mean, 10 years has flown by, but we agree. You know, the more we can bring services and programs and infuse energy to the downtown corridor, the better. We just know that.
Well, and the nature of the mayor's ask, can you read it again?
Yeah.
Have it in front of you? Because it's so big and broad, and it seems to me that everything that we're talking about, if you want to be that beacon that he's sort of alluding to, well, you can read it.
Okay. I move that the city request a report from the Human Rights Commission on actions the city should take to promote diversity as a core strength of our community, and that ensures everyone, regardless of culture, race, or ability, can thrive in safety and dignity.
That's a big ask. And visibility is a big part of that, I think. You know, feeling safe, you've got to be kind of surrounded by those signals that this is a cool place. So it sounds like we're all agreed that we're going to purchase JCPenney and Nordstrom's, ask the city to purchase those, and we're going to stick cool, multicultural, and queer things in those spaces. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
A friendly 3-minute warning because we do have a hard stop at 7 because we need to initiate YouTube.
That's
for the next
right.
Meeting, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, let's end on this agenda item unless there is any final comment. And then we have member remarks and announcements is the last one. Any final comments on the previous agenda item or any member remarks and announcements? All right. Well, I think that's a good stopping point, and it gives Tricarico and I a 3-minute. Are you in the next meeting, Tricarico?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.